Great. We are recording. Cole, do you want to kick things off with kind of the intro, and then I will kick things off after our conversation? And or Kim, do you want to say anything?
No, I wasn't here for the first one, but I'd love to chime in when appropriate.
Sure. And this is the first official meeting. We just had a meeting before the meeting, so you didn't.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, Colleen, Jess, and I chatted a bit last week just to prepare for this meeting, but this is, as she said, the first full task force meeting, such that it is. We're still 3 members short. I understand that these are trying times, and working with bartenders is often herding cats. So if we get this many people on a call on average, I hope we can get different people available, and we'll try to rotate the times so we can get make it easier for people who weren't able to join this time to join next time. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Kim, I'm sorry we didn't think to invite you before, but I'm glad you were able to make it. My name's Cole. For those, I know all of you at this point. So my name's Cole. I am on the national board. I'm also on the membership committee. And last year, Colleen Hughes, who may or may not be joining us here in a minute, but has been working on this project pretty extensively for a long time. So this is in many ways her project as much as anyone's. She and I were trying to get a national committee dedicated to Bridge and DEI work off the ground last year. And I want to say talked out of it, because it was, but we were informed that a lot of the work that we were hoping that committee would do was already being spearheaded through other elements of the organization. So rather than trying to corral all of that existing work, which would probably have slowed it down and made it very created this cumbersome bureaucracy for something that was already ongoing, that there were elements that individual committees and individual working groups were already working on. So the bits and pieces of it are sort of, there's, and Jess can probably talk, because she's in all of these conversations in more detail about which committees are doing which elements of it. But part of it was the membership committee's mandate. And Colleen and I, are the document that we crafted, there was one specific element that felt like it was germane to the membership committee, and that was figuring out a toolkit or some other guidebook, whatever we want to wind up calling it, for individual chapters and their leadership to recruit membership from a more diverse base. So along all of these different social identities, ones that are apparent to the casual observer, ones that maybe less so, the Guild has historically appealed to a rather limited range of people. And this current moment, I mean, a lot of chapters, the membership has dropped off considerably, especially in the last few months, once the COVID extensions expired for a lot of people at the end of last year. I know in New Orleans that's been the case. But as the world starts to reopen, which, knock on wood, it will continue to do over the next few months, and people have more disposable income, people are traveling again, bars and restaurants are open again, and people who work in them are making money. We hope to be able to rebuild our membership, but having been sort of hollowed out and being able to rebuild, I think gives us a really unique opportunity in this moment to rebuild through the lens of the values of the organization in a way that we weren't really able to make a focus before. So the work that we're doing in this task force, in theory, is how do we rebuild the organization, build our membership back up to hopefully even bigger than it was before, but in doing so, maybe reaching some of those communities and some of those identities that we have historically not reached as well as we might have hoped. So anyway, you all know me. My name is Cole. I'm down in New Orleans on the national board, on the membership committee. And thank you all again for being here. So I think round of introductions, talk about who everyone is on the call and your interest. I think that would be, oh, and here's Colleen, perfect. Colleen, we're just starting intros, so you really didn't miss anything. And I talked about sort of the overall reach of this program. So Jess, if you want to sort of guide us through the rest of the intros and then take things from there.
Sure. So the next up, according to my screen, is either Colleen or Kim. So Colleen, you just got here. So why don't you introduce yourself? And then Kim, you're on deck. Carlos, you're in the wings.
Hi, I'm Colleen. I'm on the National Board of Directors. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm super excited about this task force. Sorry that I was a little bit late.
Different time, not late. There you go. Kim, Carlos, and then we'll go to Alina.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Kim Hasserud. I'm also on the board of directors. Was elected president this year. Yay. Inclusivity is something that's super important to me. And, you know, I'm really committed to trying to open up more pathways for inclusivity on multiple levels. So, yeah, I hope to try to develop more pathways within the organization too. So in that way, I really align with this group and would love to support and help in any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim, Carlos, Alina, and then someone wants to volunteer to introduce Joe, and someone wants to volunteer to introduce Jean. We'll just get their introductions as part of the recording. Carlos.
Hi, I'm Carlos. I'm from DC. I'm a regional representative for the Northeast, the USBG. And I'm very stoked about this group. When Cole hit me up, inclusivity is huge for me as, you know, just I am like, I'm Hispanic, my parent, first generation American, and I've had my own identity, you know, like crises growing up, but like bartenders and the bartending community has been like my kind of home and reprieve. And I really want to do everything I can to help people find like a safe place with other, you know, like-minded people, other that care about the bartending community. So I'm very excited to be here.
Very cool. Glad it's nice to meet you too. Alina.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alina Malkin. I am in Pittsburgh. I'm actually our chapter treasurer this year. That's new. But I've been working on a lot of like diversity and inclusion and also social justice projects here locally. And I definitely want to see how those things can be more of a national program and how we can empower the USBG to be more involved in our communities in general as far as social justice and community welfare. So I think that that's also something that ties into these conversations we're having on a national level.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to get to work with you in this context as well as kind of the advisory board context too. Does anybody want to introduce Joe in absentia?
Colleen, I think you probably know him better than anyone else on the call.
Yeah, Joe is he's a great guy. Joe P, as everybody knows him. But I have never in my life met a kinder, more warm, welcoming person. When I first met him, he had a saying that was along the lines of leave every place better than you found it and leave every person better than you found them. And he's just, I originally met him at Juniper Harvest years ago, and I loved his energy and his sense of really being kind and thoughtful in every interaction and with every person. And that was why I asked him to join.
Rad. And Jean Samuel in absentia.
Jean's great. We kind of got to know Jean from trying to work with the Brown and Balance people on some other stuff, and got him in on the fold for the advisory board. I think he's been doing great, very passionate. And I will say these were kind of blind reach outs. We kind of were like, we know you see things that we need to fix. Are you down to help us fix them? And the answer was a resounding yes. And so I definitely appreciate that about both of them.
Awesome. And then because there's some crossover, I'd actually talk to Jean tomorrow. So I want to make sure that we are crystal clear as mud as how there's a lot of different committees and a lot of different task force that, as Cole kind of alluded to, our diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded in all of these different initiatives instead of it just being a silo that is occasionally paying attention, which is a really powerful difference because it's actually hard to kind of co-opt it, or not that anybody would intend to do that, of course, but it is also hard to ignore when every task force and every committee has added or is not just added, but highlighted or emphasized the focus that they are doing around diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice related work. I'm Jessica, so I know Carlos, I haven't worked with you before, so just as an FYI, I'm an outside consultant that is contracted with USBG through both the foundation and the board as a DEI kind of helper person. So sometimes that means I herd the cats and like kind of administer the meetings and things like that, which I volunteered to do for this committee. So you'll get like emails and doodles and I'll take the notes and those kind of things. So y'all can do the work and you don't have to worry about the bookkeeping kind of parts of things. That also means that I can attend some of the meetings and then everything filters through my DEI experience or lens, which again, like Colleen and Cole both said, I'm in all of these different committee meetings. So then if somebody has an idea, there's a possibility that it complements another committee or a task force. So it all just kind of plinkos through my head. The advisory group that has been mentioned, that Jean is actually the kind of header-upper for this particular year, actually started last year, and I kind of refer to it as the car wash, so that any task force or any committee has a group of members at large to look at or review different policies or procedures or projects or things like that, so that it's available to all of these existing things coming directly from the members, which is how I've worked with Alina before, and I've worked with Jean before, and then Cole and Colleen and Kim were on some of those calls for the advisory group because of their national board service and just general interest and support. So the advisory group is still happening. It has not, just to be clear, the advisory group hasn't met yet this particular year, nor has it set its agenda of what it individually wants to work on, as well as the other committees and task force, what it wants to send through the car wash. So that is still being developed as some of these first meetings are just starting to happen in the month of March. So that's kind of some background on me or that other group that was being mentioned. I don't know, Carlos, if that's clear as mud or you have any questions about that.
I actually, yeah, I get to say this for once. I've read your book, so
Whoa!
Yeah.
Welcome to the fan club.
Excited, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It is still the case that in writing a book, I feel like I've exposed everyone to my underwear drawer, but luckily very few people have gone to the drawer, and then I find things like that and I'm like, oh, great, that's not awkward. Thank you. No, hopefully it wasn't terrible. Okay, so for this particular group, which is a task force guided with the bridge or the diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of initiatives, I tried to put together things in a shared sheet of the different focus areas, some different ways of making decisions, and the general directory or kind of the language or the, for lack of better words, kind of the charter or the idea of what this group does, which is a draft and editable at any point in time. So anyone in this group gets to determine what this group does or doesn't want to do. It's just getting started, which is why I can kind of like herd the cats around that. So when we had Colleen, Cole, and I had kind of our meeting before the meeting, it seems that one of the asks of this group is, I'm going to use the word toolkit, but the idea that there could be a noun that will then more than likely, one, support chapter leadership, chapter members, also just general membership around recruitment and retention of different members. And the different members could be professional position, but also members with different social identities that are primarily underrepresented in the industry or certainly within the membership of the association. I think that's kind of the initial charge. And then kind of parallel to that, the NCC is reviewing the CHOPS manual, which is the chapter operations manual. And so part of the work within the CHOPS manual will also be this kind of toolkit around intentional recruitment and retention, best practices, methodology, programming ideas, initiative ideas, etc. To my knowledge, none of this work exists yet. So we're starting from a blank sheet of paper, which sometimes can be quite intimidating. So in the meeting before the meeting, I came up with kind of an idea or some suggestions to kind of at least get our minds moving in a way, but we are not linked to or set in that particular thing. It's just a way to kind of create a structure that you then can say, I don't like that structure, let's do this instead of blank. So this particular call, I thought I would kind of introduce that piece just, but before we do that, are there thoughts or comments or ideas or questions in general as we begin to kind of focus what this group may do? And are there other people that should be invited into this group? And that can continue as well. So I guess that's the first question on the table. Cole, you looked like you were raising your hand, but I didn't know if you were actually asking or.
My hand raised was not an intentional desire to speak.
Got it. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, knock it out.
So, and looking kind of at the charter, and the last part says, we've been tasked to build a bridge-oriented recruitment toolkit for local chapters to use. So it's specifically that. It's a toolkit for local chapters to create more diversity in membership, not necessarily like other toolkits for like other committees to use or to create more diversity. Specifically, like I'm thinking, for example, like the nominating committee could probably also use a toolkit.
Sure. So again, like the word toolkit sometimes freaks people out. So that I'm just leaving it open to, it may eventually be called something else, but in the meantime, the word that's being used is toolkit. So when I've met with the different committees or the overlap that all these folks serving on different task force or committees, I think that the commonality, Kim, that I think you're referencing is that people are trying to document best practices and implement actual practices that may not be currently being done, or certainly not being done in an intentional or systemic way. So like the NomCom committee you brought up as an example, we had some really amazing conversations last year that I was able to be part of. And now that we've had those conversations, now that committee will also probably figure out a way, and I might use the word rubric, right, of like how to intentionally recruit applications, how are those applications being reviewed, what happens in the next period of the process so that it is more systemic. Most of the committees that I've had any access to are kind of all at this space, and the word toolkit is what is being used until we find out what each of those committees and task force are coming up with.
I guess the toolkit, it wasn't, I like that word toolkit, but I guess it was specifically because it said for local chapters to use. I guess that was where my,
right. I think that's, okay. Yes. And I think that's what this group is doing as part of the chapter development, as well as part of that will eventually be incorporated into the updated CHOPS manual that the NCC is working on. Okay. I think. Am I missing something, or I'm?
No, okay. No, that's fine. I'm just, for toolkits, I just wondered if that was, it seems like it's really specific to local chapters versus could committees use this toolkit too? I guess that was my question. Are we creating a toolkit that's specific to chapters, or?
I think the vision for this toolkit is that sort of like lowest level new member recruitment, bringing back old members, retaining those members, more to just be USBG members rather than using it to recruit specific, for specific committees or other volunteer opportunities for existing members. So it's more about creating new members rather than bringing existing members to specific roles. But as with any kind of tool, you can find different ways to use it. So I would expect that a lot of the strategies that we're using to reach out to a broad range of members or potential members in the case of what we're doing right now would also be applicable to recruiting people from diverse identities to within the organization. So I think there's probably some crossover, but the focus is on just bringing in new members or returning members.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Makes total sense. I just wanted some additional clarity on that. That's okay. Cool.
Sure.
Yeah, this was partially this was a MEMCOM task force right off the bat. So, yeah, I think, but I think it could be expanded.
Right. So I did not mean to get us down a rabbit hole. I'm not interested in expanding this particular task force. I was just trying to talk about like all of the different committees and task force related to the guild and the foundation are all doing very similar pieces. This particular group of humans that may also expand to other humans. This goal is the member level, the chapter level, the chapter leadership level to come up with an entity that is currently being referred to as a toolkit that could be used for people who don't belong to a chapter, who are interested in recruitment and retention of their communities within chapter leadership, within chapter organizations, within regions, etc., through what will eventually be an updated CHOPS manual. Carlos.
If I may, I feel like in essence what we're saying is like the people that we currently have, the people that are still here, still members, still active, it's safe to say will continue to do so on their own accord. And this group is kind of like, how do we reach the other people? How do we reach the people that are not, maybe are unaware of, don't even know we exist? And, you know, like basically treading that new ground to expand and reach a more diverse overall group of bartenders.
Yeah, so yes, I think that how I use the word recruitment is people who used to be members who are no longer members, people who've never heard of the guild or the foundation and are one of the different kinds of members and or professional within the industry or within the profession that very likely could be a member of a chapter, need to be recruited and brought in, right? Then the retention piece of it is the people that the organization wants to stay a member, which is actually a conversation we will have probably in a different meeting, is that there may be people that are members that shouldn't be, or that collectively the guild would be stoked if they would leave. Any association has those people. I call them the ones that you wait to like die, drop out, or graduate, right? So when you decide who you actually want to retain, then that's when you can have a conversation of there are current members who feel completely ignored, or they're having a really bad experience, or maybe because of COVID, maybe not. They haven't connected to their people. So they also may need some intentional outreach to keep them a member, even though they are technically already a member. So that's why it's recruitment and retention. Keep the ones you want to keep and bring in more people that you want to be bringing in. Clear as mud again?
Yep.
Also to play off of what Carlos said earlier, that we're not looking exclusively for people who haven't heard of the guild and aren't members. There is another fairly sizable population of people, and some of them are current members and some of them have never been members, but who are aware of the gig but have a negative association with it. So that is another potential pool. It's not just people who don't know about us, it's people who know about us but may have their conception of the guild is not what we would hope it was.
Right. There's a lot of reasons why people don't join when they have heard about it. There's a lot of people who've never heard about it. There's a lot of people who joined, had a bad experience, or changed professions, or just dropped their dues. There's a lot of reasons why you would need to bring people back into the fold. And then specifically from a diversity place, one of the most common things that often happens is organizations create a committee like this, where we're only going to focus on recruitment. And it can actually be not just off-putting or a microaggression, but like really disastrous, because you're not actually paying attention or naming the exact same, I'm using air quotes, diverse people that you're trying to recruit. You're not taking care of the diverse people that are already here. So when you stand in a room and say like, we need to recruit more people, then it can feel very silencing and marginalizing to the few that are actual members that aren't given a chance to be part of the community. So you have to do both at the same time. Great. So that kind of gets us to like where the guild and the foundation are, what the role is, how this membership committee sub task force thing is doing. In the spreadsheet that I made, I just cut and pasted some of the general information that was related, and Kim was referencing this, what was related to kind of the ask of this group, as well as the contact information of the people that I know that are thus far that are in the group. We may end up adding more people, we may not. This is actually a really nice size group that it's going to be. Sometimes the groups can get so big that it's like virtually impossible to schedule a meeting or something. So I wouldn't encourage it getting too much larger than this, at least not yet. You've already started, which is awesome. But if you can in the document, add your cell phone numbers just so that people can text each other, etc. I have learned from other other committees and things that I've done. I use doodle polls, which Cole initiated, I think, to set up the time and date for this one. And some people check email regularly and some people do not. So then a text message of like, hey, we have a meeting tomorrow. Hey, we have a meeting in an hour. Hey, we're in a meeting. Sometimes are also helpful. So having everyone's cell phone number would also be helpful. Great. Alina, were you able to get into the document?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Just checking. I just saw your message in the chat. Apologize for that. Okay, so then what I thought I would do is we have about half an hour left of this particular meeting, but what I thought I would do is share some of the tactics that I have been successful in getting groups like this to kind of start generating ideas as to what to do or what not to do. So in the meeting before the meeting with Cole and Colleen, if we think about the end game and then work backwards, oftentimes what tends to be kind of a pretty common best practice at the end is for people who may be brand new to these conversations or intimidated by these conversations, or people who think they are super experts and just haven't been able to gain any traction on like a local chapter level around having a conscious, intentional plan or focus around recruitment and retention of different people than the usual suspects of who are members of chapters. And those differences can be social identities as well as professional positions. I know that the USBG avatar is generally speaking like a white guy who makes a very fancy cocktail I've never heard of. That's not the industry. That's just, it is an easy niche, or like people who participate in the cocktail competitions. That's not every member. So who else could be members? So thinking about different kinds of membership or different professional positions that would qualify for membership is like a kind of one level of a rubric or a table. And the other level are social identities that can be thought about or talked to until you start mentioning them. And then what ends up happening is people just kind of get paralysis, right? So if we were to take racial identities, for example, like, okay, we need more not white people, go. That is an ineffective way of creating a diverse racial intended recruitment or retention plan, because people freak out and don't know how to have those conversations without then like tokenizing someone or doing something that could actually be more harm. So I recommended a very strange book recommendation, which Cole trusted me and took me out on it, but he's going to lift up the book and it's going to be shocking. But some other clients that I've worked with actually wrote a book specific to sorority recruitment. That's right, sorority recruitment. But what is interesting about the book, once you get past the sorority recruitment part, it's called I Heart Recruitment. It has a heart on the cover. Cole bought that book. Someone send him a drink. What is interesting about the book, though, is that it is targeted to 19-year-old, primarily white women who are in charge of meeting numeric quotas of recruiting first-year college students who have opted in to go through Russia recruitment and how they are going to recruit members to their organizations, where that seems like a very big stretch of a metaphor. What is interesting about it is that the tips and things like that that are in this book are free. They very much are based on recruiting from a pool of people you do not actually know, and how to build out kind of the networks of people who you do know. So one of the theses of the book is that if you make a list of like 100 people, those 100 people are likely to be very similar to you. And if those 100 people are then asked to make a list of people, those people tend to be very different than you. If you can get like 3 rounds out, then you end up having a much more diverse pool of people to pull from. Another piece that I think is important in the book is there's, fall rush recruitment and college campuses. And then there is year-round recruitment, which is about living your life and leading as like a marketing person year-round about what the organization means. And all the initiatives that USBG is doing right now, I believe, are very much around elevating the entire industry. So from those two kind of very strange places, and again, I don't know why Cole trusted me enough to read a pink book with a heart on it, but he did. I think that, I know, Cole, if you're prepared to do like a little book review so that no one else has to read this book, but there are things in it that once you get out of, this is about sorority recruitment, what is going on, are like the easiest, freest, no background knowledge recruitment tips. So that's one piece that we could kind of have of the conversation in the thought about what these things mean. And then we also talked about what likely outcome for the chapter leader who's going to get tasked with this assignment, which is in itself problematic. What kind of thing, what would that look like that they would have? So I thought we'd spend the time kind of connecting those dots. I'll take this piece, which is kind of the toolkit thing we were talking about. Does anybody, or Cole, we can start with you with the crazy book idea, but does anybody else have any thoughts or comments that have kind of come from the act of recruitment or the act of retention, what that brings up for you?
I mean, I guess I can only speak to like what I've been trying to get going in our chapter, where I've seen a lot of successful recruitment that's also like people that are end up being incredibly involved in our community and incredibly helpful and participatory, is like through partnerships with other organizations rather than like this old model of recruitment that USBG tends to do, where you like send a bunch of guys out and they do a bar crawl and they're drunk by the end of it, handing out pamphlets that say USBG on them, which is obviously bringing in a certain type of person, versus, doing a charity partnership and we end up with people that attend that charity event that join as enthusiast members and end up like being really valuable to our chapter, and also bringing a lot of diversity to our chapter, where we're not getting that through the old USBG models of finding new members.
Yeah, so it's good to at least identify what hasn't been working, right? Because it hasn't been working. And Alina, just to kind of, what kind of pushback do you get on I'm summarizing kind of what you said, but we should be doing things differently? What kind of pushback are you getting on that?
Oh, there's no pushback. And especially like just watching how our membership changed through COVID, the members that we lost who haven't renewed their membership, like, yes, some of it is, people that just financially can't, and I'm fully expecting those folks to come back once they're, gainfully employed again. But we lost a lot of members who were just here for the drunken party. And those are the members who were problematic to us rather than, really helpful to our community. Because if they don't have parties to go to, they don't want to be around. And now we have this opportunity to like bring in a new culture.
So
That's great. Go ahead.
At least like locally, I found that here in DC, like like Cole said, like some people obviously they know very well who we are. They were members, maybe they weren't members, but they definitely knew about us, and they're either here or they're not. But after like for a few years being involved here, and DC is pretty small, like, you know, I got pretty tired of just like trying to be, you know, like, I don't know, just be at the same people. So I've had like success in numbers through like actually surprisingly like significant others of bartenders. You know, we have like enthusiasts that are like people with significant others, like so and so's always busy, always working, but you know what, I'll join. And their significant others are enthused because, you know, they care about somebody who's involved in the community and they want to see how they can help. And a lot of times those members are more active and communicative and, you know, just present because, you know, our jobs are hard and they are extremely time consuming, and sometimes people just don't have time, and maybe partying is part of the aspect, you know, like Alina said. But finding those enthusiast members really helps diversify, you know, the overall chapter, if you will.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with parties sometimes because that's how you build community, but it's also how you can impair a reputation that also does like educational events or tries to elevate the industry, right? So there's pros and cons to that. Other thoughts or observations of what you've noticed?
I just had we had started getting some of the members of Black Bourbon Society were joining our chapter as enthusiasts, and they were great and they were super passionate. And so I was lucky enough to get to spend some time with Samara Davis, who's the founder president of Black Bourbon Society, a couple days ago, and I just sort of mentioned to her a little bit about maybe doing some fun sort of maybe, you know, potentially it was all loose, but like co-branding some events or letting us get in front of their members and letting them get in front of ours to kind of a lot of would be enthusiast members, but very active enthusiast members, and to maybe partner up on some really cool stuff. And she was super into it. She was like, yes, I love it. I want to do this. She started throwing out stuff. She's like, I'm working on this thing. We should get together on this. I'm working on this. And I was like, we'll put it together. And she might also be somebody that would be nice to invite to this group if the group is fine with adding her. I think she would be a boon. But she was super into it, and like the Black Bourbon Society president for Charlotte's chapter of that organization has joined the USBG Charlotte, and he's been bringing all kinds of people along. He got Samara to do one of our USBG meetings where she got to talk to our members about their organization, and I think it would just be such a natural pairing for us, and to kind of help fill out. And those people, the enthusiast members, they're still going to bars, and they're interacting with probably different bartenders that don't know much about the USBG, and they can be like, oh my gosh, I'm a member of this really cool bartending organization, and you should think about it too. And so trying to work partnerships like that, I think, will be really beneficial for us in growing our numbers. I hope.
Yeah, that'd be great. And the truth is that there are no associations, there are no organizations, there are no corporations, there are no businesses that are completely nailing intentional, diverse, inclusive recruitment and retention. Like, nobody is doing an amazing job at this. Even if you take an organization whose mission and vision is specifically around a particular kind of diversity and inclusion, they are still struggling with this and still having a hard time figuring out how to intentionally do things. And partnering is a great way to kind of work through and around different people's best practices, etc. So other thoughts or comments in general about kind of what is happening or what's going on? And then I want to kind of share what I think is a usual kind of outcome of the work of a group like this, that maybe like I'm making this up because I don't exactly know the nomcom schedule, but I think it's like October-ish. But when the idea is that this toolkit that we're currently calling a toolkit, if it was done before new chapter leaders were thinking about becoming chapter leaders and could be rolled out so that the new chapter leaders know that this is something they're about to do. I think that that's roughly October, maybe September-ish. So between now and then, I want to spend some time today talking about what that would look like, or what often it looks like, so it can be made specific for USBG. But from my experience working with a bazillion different organizations, what that often looks like, to get everyone's kind of brains thinking similarly. And then our next meeting, we can actually start potentially building out directly to that to have a deliverable. But before we move to in-game, are there any other kind of pre-game thoughts?
I just had one other thought, in that, we're talking about methods of recruitment, but also talking about why recruitment is important, because I do think there are some leaders out there that are fine with the status quo. Fine with the
Sure, because the organization's probably super comfortable and fun for them.
Sure. And so talking to them about why this is important, not just the how, but the why.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that, to be perfectly fair, I'm only a couple of chapters into iHeart Recruitment, but one of the things that they stress very early on is actually the first step is that the fundamentals are two things, which are people and purpose. And so an organization is it's a collection of people. So the recruitment is really fundamental to an organization by bringing in people. And we're not a sorority, so we have, the lifespan of a membership isn't just the finite 4 years that a person is in college. So we are.
Speaking, you join a fraternity and sorority for the rest of your life to be held to a higher standard for the rest of your life, Cole.
Fair. But the organization in the micro isn't dependent on that 4-year churn of new members. But we are still, people will move on from them. So if we do not actively recruit, specifically the quality and type of people that we want to represent our values as an organization, then we're essentially dead in the water over a long enough period of time. Without recruitment and retention being a central focus, the organization will cease to be. And the other element of that first thing is purpose, which is what are the values of our organization? What do we stand for? Why do we exist? What value do we bring to our members? So being able to articulate that, and honestly, that's something even I've been a member for almost 10 years, or probably over 10 years now, and I have trouble sort of articulating in an elevator speech the concise value to a day-to-day member of the organization. So being able to, what is our value as a group, and what do we bring to our members? What do our main members bring to us? I think those are the kind of things that recruiting, regardless of the lens that we have of diversity with this specific group, being able to articulate those values is going to be a key for this group.
And come back to the beginning is exactly why it is so powerful that so quickly the guild and the foundation embedded intention and responsibility across committees and task force and boards and chapter leadership. And this is a full commitment instead of being a side committee that gets to do it, because this subgroup is going to, if it focuses on a recruitment and retention toolkit that can be used on a chapter level, then that's one piece that all these other things are going to be doing that will hopefully be connected to the same purpose, the same values that most people can't articulate. So then this is one way of showing how those values and purpose can be articulated through recruitment and retention without being bogged down about yes, but what about marketing? Or yes, but how do we respond to social media? Yes, but what about the code of conduct? Whereas you have different groups of people focusing on very different things with the same kind of intention and purpose happening at the same time. So it's actually faster and institutionally supported simultaneously, which is generally speaking, is, to be completely frank, is unheard of, because most organizations and the leadership don't actually care. It's trendy and it leads to great t-shirts, but that is exactly what is not happening, which is amazing and unexpected for it, honestly, for it to be happening as fast as it is. So in the 10-ish minutes that we have left today, I want to spend some time talking about what I had in the pre-meeting with Cole and Colleen. I had mentioned what, like, if let's say September or October is the end game here. The game that I usually recommend people to do is pretend that you are new in town. And if you can just spend some time with your brain when you are new in town, how do you figure out where you do want to go? How do you figure out where you do not want to go? To go hang out, go eat food, get drinks, go on a date, take your family. The reason why this is a very important practice is that oftentimes, even the most well-intentioned people that I work with around DEI inclusion, when we talking about recruitment and retention, it becomes this external thing. And if you can remember or hypothetically play a mental game with yourself, that when you are new in town, you're testing places out. You're figuring out where you do want to go. You are automatically driving by places and being like, dude, I want to go to that place because of what the sign looks like, or what it doesn't look like, or what the parking looks like, or I can smell barbecue from 7 million miles away, and I will make note that somewhere in that direction is a barbecue place. But because you already have those skills, that is the base of a conversation that will eventually be like a template of questions that if a 12-month calendar, for example, is planned out as to what lens people are going to be paying attention to in that period of time, and ask these same template-based questions, then you're actually teaching people from all different kinds of skill levels with all different kinds of identities how to intentionally focus on things that are not just what they're used to. So starting at, like, you're new in town, how do you find where you want to go eat? How do you find a mechanic? Doctors are usually hard because it's about like accepting new patients or not. But more nuanced places like restaurants or hospitality is also on par with this particular organization. Getting your space there, then the kind of end game often is like 12-month programming plan. And I'm using programming in multiple ways here. So what has worked with other organizations that may not work here, so y'all can all be like, no, but just to kind of give you a starting place of thinking is, so like Colleen was talking about, some people know this, some people don't know this, but each month of the year often has like a theme. So today is like International Women's Day. March tends to be Women's Month or Women's History Month. So maybe in this annual calendar template, that would be mostly blank, right? Because each chapter leader or each chapter subcommittee would be filling in the details. March would be focused on women specifically. So then you would have this template of questions that would be thought about and asked. Where do women hang out? What are women-owned businesses? What professional organization do women-owned businesses go to? Where do women not hang out? Where do women not feel safe? Where, like, whatever those kind of questions might be, kind of starting with, if you were new in town, what kind of questions would you be asking? Could then be dropped into each month, at least. Some groups are going to be super far advanced, right? So like Alina, I think about you in Pittsburgh, the idea of you focusing on one identity for 30 days. Your chapter may be far faster than that. So maybe you do it in 12 weeks. So you have like an intensive kind of recruitment and retention focus or something, but giving people a structure that they then can fill in for their local communities with these different lenses or kind of template questions to start asking about, that will help with members to actually recruit months in advance. It will actually help with picking different venues or vendors or suppliers in future months as you're planning actual social or educational programs in the future. So it gives people space to customize for their local community while also providing an intentional structure to teach people skills that they may not have. Often that is what kind of the end result toolkit looks like. So then working backwards are what are those template questions? What are the different social identities, or what are the different professional roles or identities that could be focused on? And do you want to do it by theme months that are typically common in the US that some people know about, some people don't know about? So even letting people know that these theme months exist. April tends to be Asian History Month. Some people don't know that. So being able to kind of map that out provides a programming resource, a recruitment resource, and a retention resource for people who are interested specifically in this kind of initiative. So that's usually what the end game looks like. Thoughts, comments? Again, with the theme of clear as mud, is it helpful to kind of know what some people come up with at the end?
So I think also with our new membership structure, part of this is also like, how do we fit this type of recruitment programming in with our new membership payment schedule? Because like we just basically reorganized so that membership is yearly and happens at one time, which completely changes recruitment from a year-round thing. Like, yes, there's programming that we should be doing, but that's not necessarily like membership recruitment programming, since membership is now like a once a year thing.
Right. And the good point, and the interesting parallel to sororities is that if people can feel included in the community and go to educational and social events, even as a guest of the chapter, then they might be getting involved before they pay dues. And then paying dues is a very low ask, because of course they're going to, because they've gotten so much benefit and have been included with intention prior to members being due. Then the recruitment piece is already happening, right?
Yeah. So for me, like, then this also becomes a conversation of like how we reset, like intentionally reset community standards, and like how we present ourselves as an organization to the public.
Yeah. So now we're back to what Cole was talking about too, is that this shared like ability to articulate who is the guild, who is the foundation, what is the purpose, what are the vision, and that's kind of the whole year, I think, with all of the committees and all of the task force, that is going to come up in every single one of the conversations. And I don't know that anybody is behind. I don't know that there really is a known, and this is a very interesting time to be able to kind of realign with what is the purpose, or what is the vision, what is the ideal of the organization. And then these are all the different ways that information can be consistently rolled out, because it isn't a common, easy to articulate shared information on any level, I think, within the guild or the foundation. Most people seem to struggle, that I've talked to, most people struggle or eventually get to the point of like, yeah, but don't we need to know this information? Yes. And while y'all are figuring out that information, here are all the different ways that information is going to be consistently fed out to general membership. It's super valid.
Also, I think the greater point that just made here, that recruitment, whether or not there's a specific window when we're targeting to get people to sign up, that recruitment is a year-round endeavor and about articulating our values as an organization and reaching out to the constituencies that we're trying to touch, even if we're not asking them specifically to become members. And I think a lot of times it's more valuable if you touch somebody 2 or 3 times as an individual before you make the pitch, then that pitch is less of a sales pitch and more like, oh, by the way, have you considered membership? But the other side of that is that we're trying to build opportunities to sign up throughout the year, so that if you're a new member and you're signing up in the back half of the year, you get your entire next year. You're signing up for the remainder of this year and the next year. If you're signing up in April, there'll be discount codes. This year, everyone who signs up as a hospitality member can sign up for $50. So you're not. We're trying to create a lot of systems to encourage or to so that the new system doesn't discourage from people signing up throughout the year. But that's more of a logistical concern, but it does help us address some of that. Like if we're doing something in February, is there something specific in February? Not really, but we can use ad hoc discount codes and all these other tools that we're building out for the new membership structure.
Right.
To
And
mitigate some of that.
to the previous conversation, to Carlos's point earlier, this is also why retention has to be part of this conversation. So then it's also about maintaining engagement and building a community with the people who are current members who may not have felt connected to that community. And if the sense of belonging is increased by the people who technically should already be part of the organization, then that belonging can also be its own recruitment tool, right? Is that like, you know, last year, I'm being hypothetical, like douchebag member, but like I've been a member for 6 years. This place sucks until now. All of a sudden, everything's great. Like that is a 1,000% more effective way of bringing in a new member and an old member than a membership chairperson saying, this is what the guild does, right? But in order to build that, you have to focus on retention and recruitment year round in order for that community to have a purpose. So back to sororities as a metaphor, which is a lifelong commitment. Thank you very much. And you pay dues for the rest of your life. Not as much as an undergrad when you actually are a grown-up, because it's a weird system, but still, like the idea though is that organization has a role on campus, and that role on campus, back to purpose and vision, is articulated year round, regardless of when recruitment is, because it has to keep people engaged regardless of how long they've been involved, officially or unofficially. So that's why it's kind of a three-dimensional conversation. And what's interesting is the people who are often most engaged in this conversation have these skills, but are often trying to convince other people who don't have these skills, specifically around recruitment or retention or marketing or clearly articulating a purpose or a vision, or just the social chatter of welcoming someone you don't know, right? Like even the community building skills on the ground are also skills that are really needed. Then when you put the icing on of that this is a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, and that we need to be recruiting intentionally people who are different than us and who have different jobs than us, most people's skills get stifled, because then they're like, I don't know how to even talk to people like me, let alone people who are different than me. What do you mean by different than me? Which is why you have to like intentionally teach these skills that, spoiler alert, you already have. You just don't know that you have these skills to apply over here. So don't tell anyone. That's literally how I have job security, is that nobody does that well. But in theory, that's what this group is going to work on. Ta-da! Carlos, are you waving? Are you thinking? Are you just celebrating? I couldn't tell what that
That
was.
was my excitement celebration hand.
Celebration hands. I'll
That's
take
like
them.
Christmas wave, princess wave from time to time.
Excellent. These are going to come in very handy. Great. So I think the next steps is to schedule another meeting. And in that meeting, my intention or plan for that meeting would be to actually set a timeline of when is the end product due. And so then in order to start the conversation that moves to the end product, the homework assignment that I would give everyone watching this recording, just because you're not here does not mean you're exempt, but everyone watching the recording and everyone that is here, is if you were, so we can start like the most basic, right? Like think of a one-page handout that someone who has none of these skills is going to be handed, because they're the ones who have been tasked by some chapter somewhere to fill this in, right? Like think about that level. So if we can make this accessible to them, they can turn the page and get more skills and more depth. But if we have a one-page worksheet that Ralph has been assigned to do because they're involved and want to get involved to do something, so everyone in the chapter leadership hot potatoed this worksheet to Ralph, then for the next meeting, what I would ask you to do is to think of, because there's 12 months in a year, let's just stick to the number 12. what are 12 different kinds of social identities or professional identities that need to be thought about intentionally around membership recruitment that are not heavily represented currently by membership of the organization, step 1. And step 2, when you are new in town, how do you make choices about where you do want to go and where you do not want to go? So in the shared document, Cole gets gold stars because I wanted you to have like an example. So Cole came up with 12 things. They're amazing. If everybody does this, then we're going to be able to have like language that everyone might like, right? And there will be some duplication and there will not be some duplication. We're not limited to 12. It's just a starting place because of the weird calendar thing. So that's the first tab, is the focus areas, used air quotes. And then the second tab are when Cole is new in town, these are questions or resources that he uses to decide where to go or where not to go. So if you can do your homework and add it to these 2 sheets, I will do the homework of figuring out when our next meeting is, and then we will start by coming up with this basic level worksheet for Ralph. And then we can spend the rest of the time actually building out more resources and deeper tool development. So Kim has to go. I also have to go because someone's in my waiting room, but I wanted to make sure that we have homework, we have the shared document, and then I will share the recording out with everybody and this link again, just in case. Sounds like a plan?
Love it. Thank you.
Sounds good to me. Thanks a lot, Jess.
Absolutely. Carlos, does it sound good? Any edits, changes, anything?
No, it sounds great. Fantastic. Thank you very much for your help.
No worries. I don't like wasting people's time. Let's get shit done. That's pretty much how I roll. Alina, thoughts, comments, additions, anything?
Sounds good. Honestly, I'm going to start thinking about things as far as partnerships go, because like some of those things make sense on a local level and some things make sense on a national level. And that would be
Great.
really cool to start building those.
Do you want me to add a sheet that says partnership and then you can just add it to the shared document?
That would be great.
Look, I'm doing it right now. Okay, great. Y'all all rock. Go have a great day. Put all your homework in this sheet. Carlos, because you have not been on a committee with me, I am creepy and maternal in all the good, well-meaning kind of ways. So I will keep this Google sheet open and I will be checking it. And there are times where I will send you a message and be like, oh my God, what a great idea. There will also be times where I'm like, hi, Carlos, I'd really like your voice on the sheet. And I notice your shit hasn't logged in a while. So you get to pick which one you want, but put your homework back in the sheet. I can be annoying and delightful. It just depends which one you like.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, y'all. See you
Bye.
soonish.